all this, but first I'm joined by Texas Senator Ted Cruz, making his debut on Uncensored. Senator, welcome to you.
The biggest cuck. The Zodiac cuck.
It's great to be with you. Thank you for having me.
It's great to have you on. Thank you very much. First of all,
very good.
Where are we with this? We know that over 100 people have been very sadly killed here. We know that another 170
That's my senator?
or more
I'm sorry to have
remain missing.
You.
Is there any hope at this stage, Senator? Do you think
never do that.
You're going to find people alive?
Well, listen, there's always hope, but obviously the further along you get, every hour, every day, the odds go down. The confirmed fatalities is over 100, as you noted. There are 165 known people that are missing. We don't know everyone that's missing. One of the problems is this was the 4th of July weekend. This is a very popular vacation spot. You had people camping, people who don't live in Kerr County who came there, were camping by the river, were celebrating the 4th of July. You had people in RVs. We had RVs, dozens of them, just swept.
Okay, so in RVs, to be sure, these are Trump supporters, right? I just want to make sure.
Into the river. And
Sorry,
so they don't have a...
It's because I care about my fellow Americans, okay? Celebrating the 4th of July, the most patriotic holiday ever, okay?
Complete list of who is missing. But it's just a question of systematic search, and it's both aerial search using helicopters, it's ground search. There are teams that are systematically covering the area. And then it's also using canines to discover. Tragically, most of what is being discovered now are bodies of people who have
Republican! I have an RV2 and I'm a Hassan sim. Dude, what are you talking about? Hassan is a Republican, okay? Hassan is a Republican.
Of those 100, we know at least 29 of them were girls and counselors at Camp Mystic. And I'll tell you, on Monday, I was there on the ground in the hill.
Oh no, not the little girls. Dude. The supply of people to diddle for Republicans are going down. It's crazy.
Country. I was at Camp Mystic. I got to tell you what I saw at the camp. It may be the most horrible thing I've ever seen in my life. The Guadalupe River is a beautiful river, and just I don't know if you've ever been in this part of Texas, Pierce, but it's Central Texas. It's the hill country, and it's widely considered the prettiest part of the state. There are rolling hills and canyons and these gorgeous rivers. And so you have lots of summer camps, about 40 summer camps, because it's a great place to vacation and kids. I've been swimming in that river and floating in that river dozens of times. And normally it's beautiful and peaceful. In the early mornings of July 4th, in the early morning hours, over 1.8 trillion gallons of water fell on that river, and it rose about 30 feet. And at Camp Mystic, the cabins are hundreds of yards away from the river, but it rose so fast that the girls' cabins had about 8 feet of water in them. You could see the water line in the cabins, and it swept all the furniture out. It blew the windows out, and tragically killed.
How could Biden do this? No idea. I blame DEI.
Killed a significant number of campers, especially the younger ones. There's one cabin right in the middle that was called the Bumble Inn, and it was a cabin of 3rd grade girls. And outside that cabin...
Whoa, I don't like the direction that this is going.
And there are 17 small white Latin crosses in the ground with the names of each of the girls on them. And at this point, every girl in that cabin is either confirmed dead or is missing right now. I'll tell you, 2 of those little girls go to school with my daughter.
Really?
One of them lived literally a block away from me in Houston. And so
Justify CPS call. Justify, I'm kidding. Okay,
in Texas, our hearts are broken right now. This tragedy, and the entire country, the entire world is watching. Every parent, it's every parent's nightmare to lose a child in a tragedy like this. And
this guy doesn't give a fuck, okay? Ted Cruz doesn't give a flying fuck, all right? Wasn't he caught, like, going on vacation during all this?
And we appreciate the outpouring of love. We appreciate the prayers from across the world for these moms and dads who are grieving with unspeakable pain.
Wow, Oscar-level performance. Not go back to acting class, okay? You look stone-faced like one of these fucking Maui statues, okay?
It's a desperate story. I've got a daughter of 13, and obviously the first thing you do, you just reflect on if that happened to you, your family, to your friends. It's just
Take some acting lessons from peers, okay? At least he's more convincing.
Let's just talk about the criticism that's come in, leveled by some Democrats, that this somehow the blame for this can be directly associated to DOGE cuts at the National Weather Service, and so on. If you've had 4 days to look at this now, from what you've seen, is there anything to suggest that anything more could have been done? And is there anything to suggest that any of the cuts that have either been made this year or are due to come in later this year, could any of this process have had a negative detrimental
He probably definitely
effect,
has the answer ready, though.
which, if it hadn't happened, could have stopped this tragedy being as bad as it is?
Yeah, I don't think there's any evidence that the DOGE
Oh, nar! Okay, no, let him finish. Let him finish.
cuts had any connection to what happened here. There are obviously and absolutely things that could have been done better, and that those are questions we need to be asking right
like
now.
What? Like what? Like what? Okay, you know what?
Listen, whenever you have a natural disaster, whether a hurricane or a tornado or
I'm
flooding,
calm. I'm very calm.
you sometimes get
I'm zen
partisans
mode.
who try to
Okay,
score political
we're
points.
zen here.
And if you see a hurricane, there are those on the left who'll say it's Donald Trump's fault, no matter what happens. I think that's inappropriate. I think we ought to be focusing on getting people out of harm's way. With respect to the DOGE cuts, in this instance, the National Weather Service, number one, predicted this event, put out an emergency alert shortly after 1 a.m., shortly after 4 a.m. So those alerts went out.
This guy is despicable. Okay, like he is he is the embodiment of absolute evil. Okay, like every single like movie where it's an evil politician is probably some Ted Cruz like fucking knockoff. Okay.
Number two, the office that had responsibility for this area was based in New Braunfels, which is also in Central Texas, right there. The night of July 3rd and the morning of July 4th, they were anticipating an extreme weather event. So not only were they fully staffed, but they had 3 additional staff members they brought in to prepare for that. So they had more than ample resources on the ground to deal with it. And
I think our nation, just like how, Asmongold says that our nation has been, needs more common sense or whatever. I think the real common sense take is if you can't have your cake and eat it too, okay? This is a problem of cause and effect, just like the laws of physics, okay? When you push a block, the block moves, okay? That's what happens, all right? When you reject funding for your state, when you cut funding from your state and people die, that's just pushing the block. That's what it is. You can't just expect to apply force to the block and expect the block to not move. That's not how physics work, okay? That's not how the laws of physics work. You are a malicious, evil, diabolical moron, and you deserve this, okay? Deserve, okay? Not tragically, a tragedy befell the golden state of Texas or whatever the fuck, okay? Mordor deserved to have the Eye of Sauron taken down, okay?
in fact, if you look at the National Weather Service union, which has been very critical of the DOGE cuts, they don't like the DOGE cuts. The National Weather Service union has said publicly those cuts had no impact on reducing hurting the National Weather Service's ability to predict this outcome. And so the union would have every incentive, if they could blame it on the DOGE cuts, to do so, and they're saying it's not. Now,
it's so hot.
In any natural disaster, there's an order to how things play out. The first priority is search and rescue, just getting people out of harm's way, saving lives. We are reaching the end of that period, but that has been the principal phase we've been in. The next phase is recovery, and rebuilding, that takes months or years. There are homes that have been devastated, billions of dollars. That's going to be an ongoing process. But the third thing that will play out in the next months and years, it is a careful retrospective, examining the precise timeline, what happened, and asking what lessons can be learned, what can we do differently. And I'll say, look, as an obvious matter, if you and I could step in a time machine right now and we could go back to 2 in the morning on July 4th, we would both run to those cabins and get those little girls out of there. I mean, all of us wish.
I know why you're running to little girls, okay?
Those girls were not
Zodiac?
in harmed way. And we'd also run to the RV camps where
This
all
is
the
the
people
Zodiac
were sitting in
speaking.
RVs by the riverbank and get them out of there and try to help the vulnerable people leave. And so one challenge when an alert goes out at 1 in the morning or 4 in the morning, most people are asleep at 4 in the morning. And so I think it is a very reasonable question to ask, how can we be more effective at getting those alerts where people hear them? And one idea that's been discussed that I think makes a lot of sense is having a system of sirens and alarms along the riverbank.
Yes, I believe that Ted Cruz, it's beginning to become kind of hard to keep track of whose leak is whose leak, because there is a number of people, there's a number of conservatives who's had like T-girl porn leaked on Twitter and on other platforms, but there's a number of people who also had like amateur porn like leaked. All right, I believe Ted Cruz had amateur porn leaked on his Twitter. Okay, I believe that is what happened. I believe that Nick Fuentes had gay porn leaked on his stream. I believe that Alex Jones had T-girl porn leaked on his show. Okay, so yeah, like there are many instances of stuff like this. Okay, trust me.
You see
Alex
that
Jones
in
is a
parts
chaser.
of Texas
Yes,
where
that's
tornadoes are prevalent.
Which is exactly why whenever Short Fat Taco comes into my chat, the first person I think of is always going to be Alex Jones. Why? Because they're also both fat and male, okay? All right.
A tornado, like a flash flood, can occur very quickly, and that alarm can give you minutes to get out of harm's way. I think it makes a lot of sense to look at a similar system here along the Guadalupe River.
If you're stressed about back taxes, miss the April deadline, or your books are a mess, well, don't wait. The IRS is cracking down. Penalties add up fast, 5% per month, and up to 25% for not filing. Tax Network USA can help. They've assisted thousands of Americans, from employees to business owners and people who haven't filed for years. They have direct access to powerful IRS programs.
Oh my God, shut up, Piers.
Yeah, because it seems to me there must be. I've not been to this region. It sounds utterly beautiful. Friends of mine have been there, say it's just a staggeringly beautiful place. But as you say, when a natural disaster like this happens, it happens very, very quickly. I would imagine, I don't know, but I've read reports suggesting a lot of the cell phone coverage can be patchy around there. So if you're getting a text message warning system, that's going to be pretty unreliable. And the siren system, it seemed to me a very...
Well, that's what you get for living in like the middle of buttfuck nowhere in Texas, okay?
logical thing which would have made a big difference.
Live in
and
the
I
city.
guess the question that comes
the cities don't
following
flood,
that
okay?
train of thought is, why was it not already in place?
Yeah, look, I think that is a fair question. You know, I'll say the cell phone coverage, particularly in this part of Texas, is very spotty. Like you, well, I have 2 teenage daughters, and my girls have been going to camp in Kirk County, in the Hill Country.
Just for the record, I cringe every single time some conservative says they have little girls as like daughters or whatever. All right, maybe it's just my like pedophilic leaning mind, but the first thing I think about is how much these conservatives want to get them to be child brides or to get them to do like child beauty pageants or something. Like it's some kind of perverted, like wicked old man shit, you know? That's the first thing I think of, okay?
For a decade. Actually,
disgusting.
my wife Heidi was there
It's
picking
not,
up
it's
our
not,
youngest
in my
daughter,
opinion, it's
Catherine,
not really
the
a
week
point
before
of
this
affection,
happened. She had just finished camp.
But that's just me.
And you know, immediately when Catherine's 14, I'll tell you, I just hugged her and Caroline when this happened, because you just think there, but for the grace of God, go I. That could easily have been our daughters. And I've spent the last several days talking to moms and dads who lost their daughters, and just the agony of that.
1 week late.
Not only do you have really lousy cell coverage there, but for the camps, and there are about 40 camps in Kirk County. This is a very popular place for both girls' camps and boys' camps. Almost all the camps make the kids leave their cell phones at home. So the kids, by and large, don't have cell phones. which means you've got only the counselors and a handful of adults that have cell phones. And so we need to have, and I
I want you guys to think about this, okay? The invention of the cell phone, despite its many negatives, it has also been a point of positivity for a lot of people, right? With cell phones, you can receive emergency alerts so much sooner, so much easier, right? You can receive anything from anywhere, like you can contact anybody from anywhere, right? It is one of the most glorious inventions of the human species, and you're just instead of deciding how to control it or how to whatever or like deciding that yeah, maybe they can make their own decision on whether or not to use their cell phones or not. Oh wait, hold on, we got to put them away. So then in case a natural disaster happens, well, see, that's conservative boot camp for you, okay?
expect at the local level, the state level, and the federal level, I expect we're going to have very serious conversations about how we improve the emergency communication and response, because obviously here we suffered a catastrophic loss of life.
Senator, you've been criticised by some that you were on a family holiday in Greece when this happened, and that more than 24 hours after the Guadalupe River burst its banks, you were seen with your wife lining up outside the Parthenon in Greece. I've seen your explanation. You were on a family holiday. You said you made immediate calls and you made plans to come back as soon as you could. I guess my one question for you, as always, as you know, because you've had this situation before when you were on a family holiday once during a massive storm in Texas and got criticised for not coming back. With hindsight, would you have preferred not to have been photographed queuing up to see the Parthenon? Would it have been a better optic not to have carried on doing holiday things?
Listen, in today's world, you always have people engaging in political attacks and throwing rocks, and I think that's unfortunate. I was on a pre-planned family vacation with my wife and daughters. We were already in Europe there when this occurred. You know, I'll tell you, most 4th of Julys, I try to go on vacation with my kids and spend time with my kids. That's the same is true of millions of people. When this crisis occurred, it was horrific, and we were watching the facts unfold. Within hours, I was on the phone with Texas Governor Greg Abbott. I was on the phone with Texas Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick. I was on the phone with Nim Kidd, who is the head of the Texas Department of Emergency Management. And then I called President Trump. And this was early on as the facts were still unfolding about the flooding.
Yeah, leaving the country on the 4th of July.
And I told the president, I said, Mr. President, we don't know all the facts yet. We don't know exactly what has happened, but we know this looks bad. This could be very, very bad. There could be a very significant loss of life. And I said, we need to make sure that every federal resource and asset that possible is deployed. And the president said, he said, Ted, anything Texas needs, the answer is yes. And so in the hours that this flooding was unfolding, we had over a dozen helicopters in the air. We had Coast Guard helicopters in the air, National Guard helicopters in the air, and Texas DPS, and we had game wardens. They carried out over 850 high water rescues. And so there was extraordinary heroism. And now we're working hand in hand with families. I was within hours of this talking to parents whose daughters had gone missing. We're working with state and local officials. We're working with FEMA to get federal resources there. And so all of...
You're working with FEMA? I don't know, man. That's pretty sus.
That if you're halfway around the world, you do it by phone. And then I got on a plane Sunday morning and flew back. And it takes a whole day to get back. And so I got in Sunday evening and was there by 7 a.m. Monday morning in Kirk County and spent the entire...
Wow, Texans actually reelected this week. Yeah, this guy is like the definition of like a sleazy politician. Okay, a snake in the grass.
On the ground. And so those who want to play politics with this, they can do.
Good job, Texans. I hope you guys are happy.
That my focus is on the crisis that is unfolding on the ground and doing everything we can to help those who are hurting right now in Texas.
It was reported, and maybe you can just clear this up.
We voted for this. We voted for this. I'm sure you did.
An eyewitness said that you, as you were lining up for the Parthenon, that somebody walked past This eyewitness said that they said to you, 20 kids
I didn't
dead in
vote his
Texas
ass.
and you take a vacation. He sort of grunted and walked on. His wife shot me a dirty look. They continued on their tour guide. Did that conversation happen?
Not that I know of, but apparently this was some angry left-wing person who said that. I didn't hear anyone say that, but apparently
Oh,
this
angry
individual
left-wing
believes
person.
they
Okay.
did. The grunt they heard from me, I have nothing to say about that. I don't recall. I did not hear any.
Remember that like clip of 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 him not being accepted by his daughter? Like he was trying to pull his daughter in for a kiss for a fucking media op, and his daughter was like pulling away as ferociously as possible. Is like, get away from me, strange man. Not good.
Wouldn't say that. But listen, we live in a world that is really polarized, and so people engage in hate on both sides that I think is really unfortunate. One of the consequences of serving in public life. Look, I see lots of people, and sometimes people say really good things. I sort of joke that people often will raise a finger to me. Sometimes it's a thumbs up. Sometimes it's a different finger, and that's, that's just sort of the polarized world we live in.
Yeah.
But I wish both sides would show a little bit of grace and treat each other with more humanity. And so there are people on the Democrat side of the aisle I disagree with, but I try very hard not to attack, not to demonize them. As you know, I do a podcast every week called Verdict with Ted Cruz. We do the podcast 3 days a week, and one of the things we do, we've taken the podcast on a lot of college campuses, and we'll.
The influencer meta is crazy. Okay, the influencer meta is fucking nuts. Get me out.
Have college students. We'll open it up to 90 minutes of Q&A. And I'll tell you, Piers, my rule when we do that is I say, look, if you have a hostile question, if you have an antagonistic question, come to the front of the line. And we're going to have a constructive, civil conversation. We may disagree, but I think all of us need to talk to each other more rather than the world we live in now of just hating each other and throwing insults, I think is really counterproductive.
I totally agree. And in fact, funny enough, when you had your sort of...
What, throwing hate against... Dude, my nigga, your president was showing like fucking montage edits of immigrants being shaved and tortured. What the fuck are you saying, mate?
Dust up, as it was reported. But actually, it was a really interesting conversation between you and Tucker Carlson. I like that conversation. I think you should have robust conversations. And all right, it gets clipped up.
I think on this rate, we're gonna be seeing some fucking Call of Duty style fucking MLG gameplay montages of like immigrants being rounded up by ICE. It's crazy up in here.
Clipped up and things go viral and people take their kind of tribal positions. But actually, you need more of that. People getting in a room and having sometimes polar opposite opinions, but thrashing it out. You only came on to talk about the floods, and I don't want to abuse that. I just can't, given we're basically building the show around this. I just wanted to ask you one question.
Should I feel bad for them? They don't
about something else.
care,
it's about
feel
these
bad
Epstein
for my people? Yeah,
files.
you shouldn't feel bad for them. No,
a lot of people
shit.
very angry that after being led to the water's edge of a belief by the administration there was going to be all this stuff coming out, client lists and so on, accountability, that suddenly it seems the shutters have come down on this. A lot of people, as you know, on the conservative right, and particularly in the MAGA world, very, very upset about this. What's your reaction to it? Now, everybody knows how much I enjoy my tea, and I'm very happy to say that today's show is sponsored by Peaks.
Sexual predator. I think he targeted and abused young girls. And all the evidence we have is there were a number of other men who participated in that.
Yeah.
And I want to know everyone who participated. I want to know everyone that went to Epstein's Island. And the Attorney General has said that there are thousands of hours of videos, of explicit videos. And what she told me, I asked her a couple of months ago what the delay was. And what she told me then is she said the delay was that they're trying to go through those videos and make sure they're not releasing images of kids being sexually abused. And I understand that you want to protect the privacy of the victim. And so that
you can just like show videos of girls being led into rooms. You don't have to like show the fucking sex scenes of like some like old grizzled cock penetrating, unfettered, ripe young woman's pussy. Okay, like you don't have to show that. You can literally just show like girls being led into a room, and that's it. Like you don't, like, what? Hello? And I'm sure they would also give you permission. Also, the Epstein shit is stupid. But you should nail the fucking Republicans on the cross for it, okay? Fuck it.
And she just said that takes time. I think they should release every adult who was culpable and responsible. I think the public should know, and I think they should be criminally prosecuted.
I completely agree. Senator Cruz, great to have you on Uncensored for the first time.
Well,
don't leave us alone next time.
All right, terrific. Thanks, John.
And please send all our very best wishes. I'm here in London to everybody involved in this terrible tragedy. I love Texas and Texan people. And it's a really unspeakable tragedy, and our hearts go out to all of you.
Unspeakable.
Thank you.